Hey, so you probably clicked that link because you're looking for things to do on the Polyend tracker to get the most out of it. And really, I did a series before where I took 5 of my favorite effects that you can do with the tracker workflow and put on the Polyend tracker. But I thought I'd follow up with a few more of these because there's a lot of little things that you can do with these. So here are some 5 more that I really enjoy doing on the tracker, as well as if you got the tracker mini, definitely bring that along and we'll get straight into it. Alright, we're here with the Polyend tracker and I've just made a basic drum beat and a basic bass line to help out explain this one, because what we're doing is, like, this is a 303, but any sample that has like a little accent at the start, this is really going to help, because what we can use the tracker workflow for is to actually cut that part off and create some dynamics with the sound. So if I was to play this verbatim, it's very static because every note is accented. So what I can do is just come into here, select everything. I'm just going to use the fill and I want to select it so it's on each note, because I'm just going to go and push the effect across the lot. And what we're looking for is position. So it's usually around here. Yeah, position. And I'm just going to select a random amount. So we want that initial part, and then what we can do is jump the sample into a specific position. This is between 0 and 100%. So say something like 50%. So I took this sample with a whole bunch of like cutoff on it, so it's going to sound a little bit more muted further on. So I'm just going to fill with that and see how this sounds. That actually sounds really cool. But those notes that I want accented at the start, I can actually bring that accent back in. So something like that. Maybe, oh yeah, we can bring that one as an accent, then maybe have something a little bit somewhere in between. Yeah. And this is just a really nice way to add dynamics without having to set up really complex sort of sounds. Like if you record any sort of sample with an accent, like I could say I don't want it to be so harsh and like have a bit more of a muted cutoff on this. I can set the position and push it further along. So it just is a nice way to think about when you're capturing samples, to like leave that like accent at the start and then having that dynamic as you go through. And they're quite long samples, but it just helps adding dynamics to it. For number 2, this one's not really an effect, but a frame of mind, and I call it the power of 3, because what happens is usually when I'm punching in drums and that, I'll leave it on a static amount, like 4 if I'm putting a 4 on the floor, or like I'll jump it up to 8 to do like snares and that. But when I'm plotting in things, I usually leave this on 3. And why is this so powerful? Now, if I was to say just mute that line and I'll pick that bass instrument there, it just gives us a really nice way to bounce around different types of notes. So it's like if I put in a note, it's going to drop down 3 steps. So that's a dotted 8. But this gives me an option to jump up one, so that gives me an 8th note. And then say if I was there, I could drop down, that gives me a quarter note. And these are really nice values to be close around. And what that allows me to do is just plot something in that's relatively easy to manage. So let's say, and then I could jump it up a bit. And then I'll drop it maybe down. So. And then maybe walk it up. And I am very happy with that. And that was just quickly pressing some buttons and plotting in the way I felt it should go in. And yeah, it's one of those efficiency things with trackers. Like we could set the steps jump to like plotting drums and that, but the power of 3 just gives us more of a dynamic way to punch in a melody, lines or chords or anything that's within that range. And it's like, you don't need to use this everywhere, but it just makes things a lot more efficient, and you're just thinking about the notes that you're putting in instead of like dealing with the tracker. Alright, now we're up to number 3, and this one sort of relates to the power of 3, but just in a different way. Like, we've got a drum sample loaded up, and it's kind of cool, but what happens if I want to have like triplets on that hi-hat? Because we have 4 steps here and we can't really put a triplet sort of in there. But with the tracker workflow, there's a bit of a workaround. So what we can do, I'm just going to remove these points here, and I'm just going to program in a simple triplet. So I just need my instrument. There we go. Find that sound. And I'm just going to put 3 of them in there. And how do we turn this into a triplet? So you got to think of this a little bit more mathematical. So we have 3 positions that we need to fill 4 spots. So that last spot, if we divide that into 3 equal segments, we can apply them onto the top. So usually I think 33 and 66. So what I can do, this one's going to hit first on the floor, so we just leave that one, but come down to here and we want to go into our XFX and we want to select micro move, and we're going to put it at 33, which I think is on here somewhere. 33, 34, it's not super specific, and then we want 66. So, oh, there we go, verbatim. So what we're doing is taking this last segment and cutting out into those 3s and applying into the first 2. And this would be 99, so we don't really consider this one, but then it will repeat its pattern. So what I can do is I'm just going to copy all these, and then when I come down here, I should be able to paste them all in. So if we play this now, we have that triplet going. So it's just going on in the background, and like you can use this in melodies, you can use this in like all different areas. And it's just managing those ratios. So it's like a fraction of a amount. So you can do fifths or whatever sort of division that you want, and it really depends on the steps that you have and how the beats are synced up. Like you can do some stuff that's really crazy with the patterns, but just on a 4 on the floor, that's how you set up a basic triplet. And say you want to spread it out, like you can definitely add some spacing in between just using the insert button. Just remember to add that double, because we did double the pattern, so we can listen to that, and then I just left that point there. And yeah, so that is a really handy way to add triplets to your track. Alright, we're up to number 4 now, and this is one that's really handy for getting more liveliness out of our instruments, because this works really well with like the cutoff, as well as seeing like a few other variables. So what it is automation. Now what we can do on the Polyend tracker is we can use the fill tool and use the from to sort of create our transitions. So we have our LFO, and we can control 2 positions, so we can actually like turn the dial, so to speak, with the tracker workflow and fill in that gradient between 2 points. But like you don't really just turn the dial to a point, you sort of like play with it a bit. So on the Polyend tracker OG, there's a bit of a way to do it, and the way I like doing it is using the button grid to draw it in. So what I can do is I'm just going to select that low pass filter, and then what I can do is use it to like draw it in. But what you need to do first is we're going to set that to 1, and then I should be able to start drawing it in. So I can, let's say, move it down, and then we'll come down here, bring it up, and try and get it back to that point there. So cool. And sort of doing that sort of movement as you do. And like this is one reason why I like the button grid so much, because it just creates a nice little easel to draw that sort of work in. Now we don't have this button grid on the Polyend Tracker Mini, so it's a bit of a different way to set it up, but it's still that single step. And like in note, if you use these buttons here, it will create a cutoff, and then it will create a note as well. So however, when you're in the FX, you're allowed to bump up and down with these 2 buttons here, which is very handy, because the way I program automation on the Polyend Tracker Mini, like I do use the fill tool to move up and down, but what I can do is I have like a start position, and then I use the buttons to move up and down, and then hit the center button. So I can double tap up, double tap up, double tap up. Say I want to go a little bit faster, I can do something like press more buttons. It's a little bit more tedious, but when you're starting to program automation, it's that sort of last stage of making the track. So it does go by relatively quickly. So you just want to make sure that you start and end the position relating to the next part of the song mode. Or if you're using it to create loops, you sort of want to create the last point match the first point as well, just so they loop nicely. Alright, now we're up to number 5, and this really comes from my chiptune days, where you create these sort of hardware sweeps. And what a hardware sweep is when you start manipulating the sound engine to create like this really frazzled sound that builds up, and I use it a lot in my tracks where I manipulate the samples in specific ways. So one thing I like to do is pitch bend a sample down and then do a hardware sweep up. So how do we set one of these up? So I've just gone about taking my saw sound and create a pitch bend down version. And it's just going to play through one shot. So what we need to do is come into the playback, and then I want to set that to forward loop. So if I play that again, it's going to repeat. But when we start pitch bending it, because how samplers work is it like higher pitches it will play a lot faster and lower pitches it will play a lot slower. So if I play it up here, it's going to play a lot faster. It might be a bit long for what I want, but we'll just give it a bit of a shot. So what I'm going to do is bring that into the pattern view. I'm just going to plonk it somewhere up the top. I just duplicated this pattern, so probably there. I'm just going to say put it somewhere there, play it in. What we can do is I'm just going to go into effects, select everything down, and I'm going to go fill each, slide up because I want it to build up. Constant from 216. How the slide tool works is it goes by every step and it's going to add that much amount, and 16 is a whole note, so every step it's going to build up a whole note. So I'm just going to fill that in, and I'll just mute everything else to see how this is going to sound. So if we listen to this in context with the drums, it creates something that's really interesting. Like, I probably wouldn't use this sample with something a little bit more comical because it sounds a bit comical, but I've used this quite a lot with a variety of different samples. Definitely vocals as well. This works really well. You create a short snippet of like a little saying that the person's saying, and I create this sort of looping motion and then build it up like that. And it really does add to like rises and fallers of tracks. So definitely give this one a shot. So I hope that's given you a bit of food for thought with the Polyend tracker, because really these are sort of things that I think make the Tracker Work Pro really special, especially that Power of 3. That's really something that I use with a whole bunch of different trackers. So definitely give all these a shot in your next track. You might like them, you might not, but definitely give them a go. And if you do think that this will help someone else out, definitely give it a thumbs up, because it does tell the algorithm to point it to other people that are probably looking how to use the most out of their Polyend tracker or Tracker Mini. So definitely feel free to do that. And if you do have any comments or queries, please feel free to leave them down below. It does help me out. And I do like going down there and having a bit of discussion about these things, because I do find them quite enjoyable. And in the end, I do have another video where I talk more about making tracker bass effects. So if you haven't seen that yet, I'll put a link there. In the end, I do have a few Polyend tracker videos there. So if you're interested, I look forward to seeing you next time.